Hey Swifties! Welcome to a brand new episode of Swiftie School, where together we walk Clownelia Street covering the latest news and Easter eggs from our fearless leader, Taylor Swift. I'm your host, Reagan Bailey, and it is enchanting to have you here. Now that we're out of the woods, let's get into today's episode. It's another great day to be alive at the same time as Taylor Swift. Welcome, everyone, to a very exciting special guest episode today. I am so excited to dive in, but before we get into today's episode, quick disclaimer that if this is your first time tuning in, this podcast is just an expression of my thoughts and opinions. We're having thoughtful conversations surrounding all things Taylor Swift, and I am in no way associated with Taylor Swift or Taylor Nation, although I would love to be. Now, today, I am so excited to be talking with award-winning music journalist Annie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so grateful that we were able to squeeze you in today because this is a very busy week for you. At the time of us recording this, today is actually launch day. I would love for you to walk me through your new Taylor Swift, the stories behind the songs books. Tell us a little bit more about what readers can expect.
Yeah. So I guess as the title sort of implies, this is basically a look at Taylor's entire catalog, all of her albums, all of the bonus tracks sort of associated with the albums, as well as soundtrack work, vault tracks, some of the other sort of like odds and ends of things that she's put out. And it's basically the stories behind them, the inspiration, what she was thinking when she was writing them, what she was feeling, the mindset of, the album at the time too. So yeah, and they range from very kind of tiny bite-sized blurbs to 2-page spreads for some of the bigger songs.
And gorgeous imagery, which I'm really excited to put on display. But if anybody's unfamiliar with Annie's work, or maybe you're just entering your reading era, I know I have a lot of young listeners. Annie, you're based in Cleveland, Ohio, but this is not the start of writing and music journalism for you. Your work has been featured in Rolling Stone, The Guardian, LA Times, and you've actually written books about other artists. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I wrote a book about Lady Gaga and Pink. I guess I fall into sort of a pop realm and I love pop music. So I'm excited about that. I also just recently put out an illustrated biography on Harry Styles, which was exciting because there's a little bit of Taylor in the Harry book too.
Okay.
And I put out a book on Christmas music last year as well, which is exciting. And I wrote a book on Duran Duran. And if you're not familiar with Duran Duran, they're a great band from the 80s that has a lot of really great music as well.
Yeah, it's funny. We get a lot of 80s and 90s resurfacing because Taylor's a big fan of a lot of 80s music. And I know at the US Open recently, she had a song that she was singing. Was it Prince of Darkness? What is that song called?
It was The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love.
Yes.
I related to that because every time I hear that song, I pretty much dance like she did. So I completely, I related to that 100%.
Now, I'm so curious. Obviously, you have your finger on the pulse at the moment because you've been deep diving into the world of Taylor. But what was your interest level in Taylor's career and discography and lyricism prior to deciding to write this book?
So I have been a long time fan of hers. I was trying to remember like the exact moment or songs that I remember hearing first. I feel like Love Story was one of the song that I remember hearing the most. I was living in St. Louis, Missouri at the time, and I remember that got a ton of airplay, and she was really popular in St. Louis pretty early in her career. So that was sort of where I jumped on, and then I just started following her career. Like I saw the Speak Now tour, I saw the Red tour, I saw the 1989 tour. I brought my mom. She was really excited because she likes Taylor too. But I've written about her a lot too, so I've reviewed Lover, I've reviewed Folklore and Evermore. And, I've written about her over the years. And so, yeah, I think I've followed her entire career, basically, like almost her entire career. Which is
a full-blown Swiftie.
Yeah, I'm a full-blown Swiftie. And, I'm always, been streaming the Eras tour on TikTok constantly, at work, at home, late at night. So yeah, I'm a Swiftie.
Okay, so on the podcast, we refer to the latest and greatest as the Swiftivities. So every week we do updates on the Swiftivities. So I was curious, I'm like, I wonder if Annie considers herself a Swiftie before writing the book and if now after. So I had asked Annie prior to recording what her favorite era was, and you said Red, which is funny because when talking with a lot of listeners, Red is actually most commonly everyone's least favorite album.
Really? That's so fascinating. Why do you know why people don't like it?
It's funny, almost everybody, and I know there's going to be a few people that write in that are going to defend Red up and down, but most people are like, if All Too Well was not on Red, that would be the album I would probably not listen to.
That is
It's
so interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I hear that one and Debut the most common, but Debut, I just think a lot of newer Swifties weren't either alive for it or around for it, so I understand that one. But I was excited when you said one of your top favorite songs was Last Great American Dynasty because that is one of my top favorites of all time.
I love that song. Like, I cannot tell you. So, like I said, I lived in St. Louis, and Rebecca Harkness in the song also lived in St. Louis at one point. So I was very
Yep.
excited about that. But I just love the storytelling. And this was actually one of my favorite parts to write in the book because I was like, okay, Rebecca Harkness is a real person. This song is about a real person. And so I went into newspaper archives. I'm like, I want to learn more
Ooh,
about Rebecca. And so I was on like, there's something called newspapers.com where they basically have vintage newspapers going back literal centuries. I was like
wow.
Googling Rebecca Harkness and I found these awesome, amazing profiles on like features on her from, decades ago. And so I
Wow.
was like, I was so excited. And, and Taylor, obviously, because she lived in the Rhode Island mansion where Taylor lives now sometimes.
Yep.
But Rebecca had musical aspirations. I had no idea that she like wanted to be a singer, was like writing songs and like the light bulbs went off. I'm like, no wonder Taylor loves her so much. And so
Yes.
that excited me as well.
Yeah, I have a Patreon group for anybody who is an avid listener of the podcast, and we recently did a deep dive bonus episode on Rebecca Harkness and sort of the similarities that are between the two
Yeah.
because it's quite fascinating. And then we also did one on Clara Bow, which was really fun because the it girl factor of Clara Bow matched with the it girl factor of Taylor in this current era of her life is super fascinating. So I'm excited that you're excited about that song because I think it's heavily overlooked.
And I think, I think the storytelling in it, and I think the way the song twists at the end too, where Taylor kind of brings herself into it after telling this great story. And then musically, I just love it. Like, I think that's by far my favorite song on Folklore. It kind of has the indie folk and her songwriting, early songwriting style. It's a really good combination of that. But yeah, I can listen to that over and over again.
I feel like, oh, obviously listeners will appreciate this, but you will as well. I am giving a spoiler for the next guest I'm having on the podcast is actually an English professor. And I sent him Last Great American Dynasty because I said I would love to hear your take on this song and Folklore as an album in general. But I'm curious to see what he pulls from the storytelling with that one because I've been pushing for a music video for years for that song because
Oh.
of the storytelling aspect. But I digress. I'm really curious, when you were writing this book, did it change your perspective at all on Taylor Swift
Mhm.
as an artist or a person, or do you feel like it just validated everything you already knew as a fan?
It definitely validated everything, but I think it also sort of deepened my appreciation. I mean, like I said, I've been listening to her music for a really long time. And when I really had the chance to sort of sit down and look at her catalog, over time. So now, she has all of these records released over almost 20 years. And
Yeah.
then also just, really do a deep dive on the lyrics. I could kind of see the connections between all the different songs. I think people know that she has different phrases and imagery that are kind of that she uses across different songs. And I love the way it connects everything. It's how this song is a callback to that song. This song is a callback to another song. And fans know that, but when you actually sit down and like connect the dots as you're writing about it, it's fascinating, and I even, and thematically as well. Same thing with Clara Bow. When you connect the dots between Clara Bow and some of her other past songs too, you can actually, over time, you can actually see all that. And so that was really exciting to me, actually.
We joke a lot on this podcast that invisible string really is
Yeah,
something that's real in
it's
Taylor's
absolutely
life.
real.
And I think there's some manifestation aspect to that, but also she's aware that she's kind of dropping those invisible strings throughout everything. But something I'm really curious, your perspective, because you went all the way back to the beginning from Debut. These wonderful books cover all 11 studio albums, over 250 songs. Do you feel like Taylor's songwriting, or how do you feel like Taylor's songwriting has evolved over the
Mhm.
years, particularly from kind of her early albums for anybody who's
Yeah.
maybe younger or a newer fan?
So I think her early albums, I think probably because she was a teenager when she was writing, they were super, super autobiographical. She was writing about the things that she was going through and the things she was living. And, because that's what she knew. But I think even then she wrote about it in a very self-aware, mature way. I mean, when I'm thinking back, like when I was a teenager, I wrote really terrible poetry there's
Yeah,
no way I could have written even half the things she was writing about, so she's
totally.
always been a gifted songwriter. I think over the years, she's really, I mean, first off, obviously, because she's gotten older, she's writing about more sophisticated things and she's writing about more things that are going on in her life, but she's done it in such a way that she's personal, but also universal. And it's a really interesting twist that, fans can kind of look at different lyrics and be like, I think that she's referencing this, or I think she might be referencing that. But you're not 100% sure because if you're going through something, you can be like, oh, I totally relate to that. Like that,
Yeah.
she's talking about what I'm going through too. And I
Mhm.
think that was the biggest change or observation that I saw is that, she's always been very empathetic and able to kind of capture the human experience in a really relatable way. But she's just really, it's almost expanded at this point.
Yeah, I think her vulnerability is something that is so unique to her, and a
Yeah.
lot of people are who are maybe on the outside or not as deep in the fandom are confused by what is it about her that feels so magnetic for fans, and what is this parasocial relationship that so many fans feel like they have with her. And I genuinely feel like, especially for, I'm a few years younger than Taylor, but I feel like I grew up alongside her with
Yeah.
the, maturing of her music and the storytelling, with song 15. When I turned
Yeah.
15, I'm like, oh, this is my jam and I'm going through this. And now it's towards her post department and these, like you said, more sophisticated moments in her life that I too am experiencing. It's so interesting how she says so little to the public, but she does it through her music, which is something that is really unique compared to a lot of other modern pop stars, if you will.
And I agree with that. Like, I think of something like Antihero, I'm like looking at the lyrics to that song and I was like, wow, do I relate to that? Feeling insecure, and like you're, anxious about your place in the world. Like
Yeah.
that song, those lyrics especially just like really hit me like a ton of bricks when that song came out.
I think you'll appreciate this. So, we have an Instagram page for this podcast, and we like to do fun prompts to get
Mhm.
everybody talking. And so, the post that went live today was, what is a comeback lyric that you would use if someone said Taylor Swift only, writes about heartbreak or
Mhm.
her songs are for kids? And mine is always from Anti-Hero. The
Yes.
do you hear my covert narcissism described as altruism as if I'm some kind of congressman? I'm like, what
I
are like
know.
those lyrics to me are so modern and different and unique. Yeah, those ones always get me on Anti-Hero.
Oh, yeah, and, and, like, I should not be left to my own devices. They come with prices and vices. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, like, she is being really vulnerable about herself and how she's feeling, in the middle of the night, like, not to, no
Mhm.
quote part intended, but yeah, in the middle of the night when you're like, you can't sleep because you have all this self-doubt and you're anxious about things, like, that's what that song reminds me of to a T.
Totally. I'm curious, being that you dove into literally hundreds of songs, do you feel like there's one song in particular that really represents her best as a songwriter and artist?
That's such a big question. One
I know.
song?
I
I
know.
mean, the song
Or an album.
the song that I always think of, and this song really, when I first heard it, like really hit me. There's two songs, I guess. Ronan, like
Mm.
I can barely listen to that song because it makes me cry. Like it is such a
Yeah.
moving, like incredible song. Just the way I'm tearing up, like even just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think I don't, people probably know the story. She wrote it based on sort of the blog posts of a mom whose young child was going through cancer, I believe,
Yeah.
and she's only performed it twice in her life because it is
Mhm.
literally just so moving. And so I think of that song when people say, "Oh, she's not a good songwriter," or, she can't write songs. I'm like, listen to that. That is from the heart.
Yeah.
She is just incredibly moving. And then Soon You'll Get Better and from
Ooh.
Lover. And when I first heard that song and I was kind of listening to the lyrics, it was like, she's talking about her mom. Her mom was
Yeah.
sick. And that's another song that just makes me, whenever I read the lyrics, because they're very simple and kind of matter of fact, but you can just sense the fear and anxiety. And, family obviously is, kind of a theme running through a lot of
Yeah.
her songs and just, how meaningful that is. And she had the Chicks on that song who she grew up listening to. And I was like, what a brilliant move, to have this group that really brought her comfort kind of there to back her up on the song. And so I
Yeah.
just always think of, I don't know, I just always think of that because it's like, no, she writes about a lot of really important stuff. That's really relatable.
I love that. I feel like those are 2 lesser talked about songs,
Yeah,
and there's a few that are constantly referenced, All Too Well is a masterpiece, but there are
exactly.
so many other songs that really put her geniusness on display, if you will.
Absolutely.
I feel like because there's a lot of crossover with pop, Lady Gaga announced a new album today.
Yeah.
Chappell Roan's having a moment. We love, Olivia Rodrigo on this podcast. Do you feel like Taylor has a different approach to storytelling through music compared to some other artists of the modern or current generation?
Well, that's such a good question. I love basically every artist you mentioned, by
Yeah,
the way. I mean, obviously
me
I wrote
too.
about Lady, but like I like that the Chapel Roan record I know came out last year is like my favorite record this year.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like Taylor's record, and I don't mean this as a slight to any of the other artists, Taylor's lyrics often feel a little bit more timeless. And like
Mm,
she has some pop culture references, especially on Tortured Poets Department,
right.
but like they don't feel dated necessarily. Like sometimes when you listen to different songs, it's like, oh, that's a pop culture reference that maybe 20 years later you wouldn't get. Or
Sure.
it's kind of slang or jargon or something that is kind of its time. And Taylor's songs just feel very timeless in that sense, and I think that goes
Mm,
back to her storytelling and just the way she is sort of capturing, personal and universal moments. But she's also doing different things, like, right? Like, a lot of Lady Gaga's early stuff was interrogating fame and then was
it's
also
true.
talking about her own mental health,
Yeah.
and like Chappell Roan as well is talking about romance and her own mental health and trying to fit in. And so I think there's a Venn diagram where there's kind of a lot of overlap in that people are just really, they're trying to be understood through their music and they're trying to, build a community and find their community via their music. And so I think in that sense, all of them are very similar. I love how they all take a different approach to that though. Everyone, depending on your mood on a different day, there's a pop artist for you.
Definitely. And something we love and talk about often is how supportive Taylor is. We say, like,
Yeah.
Taylor walked so these other artists could run, is
Yeah.
how I feel a lot of the time. She really has paved the way in so many different regards, from like pulling her discography off Spotify to really advocate for artists and her Woman of the Year speech. Like, she's just so many aspects of female empowerment that I love. But you had mentioned something earlier about kind of uncovering, vault tracks and some clues and
Oh
Easter
yeah.
eggs. Are there any like lesser known facts or anecdotes that you uncovered during your research that you think people would want to skip to in the book?
So it's funny. I knew this at the time, but I had forgotten about it that Taylor Swift was on an episode of CSI, Crime Scene
Ooh,
Investigation. And
yep.
so this was like 2009. And so I wasn't a regular watcher of the show, but at the time, like I knew that she was on it. But I went and watched it back on YouTube and I had forgotten how much did she want. She was going into acting earlier in her
Yeah.
career and crossed over and actually how good she is. The episode is a little bit heavy. It can be a little bit scary, a little bit mature, but she had a song in it and there was a remix of one of her songs in it that's like super, it's unlike anything else in her catalog. It's very kind of 90s almost. It's You're Not
Ooh.
Sorry. It's almost like like it would be on like alternative radio in the 90s. And
Yeah.
I think it's finally on streaming now. But I was just
Okay.
like, this is really interesting. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if I ever heard that at the time. But it's very different than the original. And so that was, I think, my favorite fact or favorite thing I dug up was I was like, yeah, this is a jam. Like this is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at her early career, especially I grew up in the Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus
Mhm.
craze. And, Taylor writing music for Hannah
Yeah.
Montana because they didn't feel like she was, the perfect fit for the show, but then they put her in the movie a little bit. And even moments like that, she was really hustling from such a young
Yeah.
age. And I think it's that Taylor's oldest time of people see this massive rise, even as fans like ourselves for so long, you see this like 2023, 2024 has been so explosive for her, but really it's been this slow burn for a really
Yeah.
long time. And people thought she was huge 10 years ago in the 1989 era, let alone now is just she's being compared to like the Beatles and Madonna. She's going to surpass Madonna's, streaming within the next year if she keeps at this rate. So really interesting. But I think something I'm really fascinated about is how she keeps so much of her behind the scenes sort of elusive and private, and you really don't know how
Mhm.
she operates as a business. So she, at the end of the day, is business, right? And I'm curious, when doing the research for this book, did you consult at all with Taylor's team? Was this purely just using publicly available resources? What did your workflow process look like, and how long was
Mhm.
the research process?
Yeah, I mean, so that was completely, I did not consult her team at all, completely separate. I actually had a publisher reach out to me and they were like, "Do you want to do a Taylor Swift book?" And I'm like, "Yes." Like,
Yes.
when do you need it? Let me know. So it was all publicly available information. But that was actually a lot of fun because first off, it's a challenge because especially now, like you mentioned, she doesn't do a lot of interviews. Back early in her career, she was hustling. And so she was talking to a lot of different people. There's a lot of
Mhm.
great interviews and like on her website. And actually, I use this a lot. She would write the inspiration down for like every song on her early records. So there was a
Mhm.
whole page on the website where she was talking about the circumstances that brought about or, what inspired her to write the lyrics. So, there was a lot of that, but a lot of it was like, okay, well, there's, she had some diary entries in Lover, in the deluxe
Yeah.
edition. So I was looking at those. I was looking at video interviews. I was seeing if there was anything. I don't think I ended up using any of this, but like on MySpace, the old
Yeah.
social networking platform, she would have
Tumblr.
videos. Oh yeah, exactly. Tumblr. So I was kind of doing everything I could to try to dig up things, in terms of that. And in terms of workflow, I mean, it was a couple solid months of work. And,
Wow.
because I was familiar with her work, it helped a little bit because I knew where to look. And,
Right.
because I had been a fan, I was like, oh, I know exactly, she got
Yep.
Benjamin Button on the,
Yeah.
set of it was me, right? So yeah.
Yep.
So things like that. So I had little ideas of things I could put in there, but there was still just a lot that I uncovered that I had forgotten about. Cause like you said, their early records, there was just a lot that, maybe I didn't necessarily know about or people kind of forgotten about. And so it was a little bit of a refresher course for that.
Totally. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I'm always curious, I think oftentimes we focus on the end result or end
Yeah.
product of whatever work, like the success of the Eras tour, or just we see this gorgeous book itself, but people forget all of the hard work that goes into that. So thanks for sharing. I'm curious, pivoting into we're going into the end of the Eras tour, the final
Yeah.
North American leg, 18 shows left. I think a lot of people are curious. Number one, what's next for Taylor? Obviously, I think a well deserved
Mhm.
break. But on a larger, broader scale, how do you see Taylor's legacy sort of evolving over the next decade, especially as she continues to release new music?
It's a really big question because and I've been thinking about this because the Eras Tour is just such an achievement and so just so mammoth. Like, how does she follow that up? I mean, in that sense, I don't think she can. I mean, just
Yeah.
because it is like maybe if she has, a 3-day festival, a Taylor festival,
Yeah.
that would be awesome. Kind of like the Lover Fest that wasn't able to
Ah,
happen, only
yeah.
like expanded, maybe something like that. So, in that sense, I don't know. I mean, it would be amazing, although it would probably impossible to get tickets if she just said, I'm going to do a theater tour, like a
Yeah.
singer
Yeah.
songwriter storytellers tour. Like that would be
Yep.
amazing if she wanted to say, hey, I'm going to strip it down.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I know that she's wanted to potentially direct. I could see her
Yep.
taking not a, she loves music, obviously, but I could see her saying, okay, and she's directed some things already. Maybe I want to do something a little bit bigger and really devote my time to something else in that realm. Maybe it's more, I said earlier, I would love to see her do a rock record, kind of like an emo record,
Yes.
because she's good at it. Like she's really, all of the vault tracks and all the collaborations that she's done over the years with like Fall Out Boy and Haley Williams, like
Yeah.
I think it'd be great, dashboard confessional styles type thing.
People
But
really love the, Carole King cover that she did at one of the award shows. That
Rock
one
and
is
Roll Hall of
really.
Fame,
Oh, yeah.
I saw that live. I was in the
Oh,
audience for
were
that, and like
you?
when she stepped out in that, and I was just like,
That
"This is
black
so."
lace catsuit.
Which actually, I should tell you, is actually on display at the Rock Hall in Cleveland right now. I saw it a couple weeks
Oh.
ago.
Oh my gosh, well, anybody who's
Yes.
listening from Ohio, you gotta check that out.
Yes. But, oh, I love that cover. I mean, how she's done some covers. She's never done a covers record. How amazing would that be if she did a covers record
Ooh.
of stuff like that, And so,
Yeah.
like, I would love that. But it's funny you mentioned the Rock Hall because I think she's also gonna be eligible. You have to be it's 25 years after your debut record. So, she is kind of
Oh.
creeping up on being eligible, and I have to think that she is a first ballot, no-brainer. I'm getting into the Rock and Roll
Yep.
Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So, that's that I think also in the next decade.
If we know anything about Taylor, she loves her accolades, and she goes after an award and achievement wherever possible, so that would not surprise me one bit.
Absolutely.
I had talked about our next podcast guest being a professor of English. Kind of rounding this out, do you feel like, let's say students 20 years from now, do you think that they'll be studying Taylor's lyrics as a part of literary analysis for years to come?
100%. I mean, I know that there's already college courses and all over the place talking about her music and why it matters. And I think so. I mean, I've compared to some of the records that she's done as almost like is literary fiction, right?
Yeah.
That she's taking some kind of real life stories and kind of building backstories of different things, or taking people she knows in real life and creating stories around that. And so, I think in that sense, that's really, really relatable and lends itself very well to college classes. But I just think, kind of like I mentioned earlier, the fact that so many of her songs reference one another and there's imagery, I think there's a real richness to all the lyrics in terms of like, what does that mean that she always mentions green eyes? What does it
Yeah.
mean that she's talking about night a lot? What does
Mhm.
rain mean? And, you can compare it to a lot of the great poets throughout, literary history. So I absolutely think so. And I think also just thematically, the way things kind of come together as well. I mean, absolutely. I would take that in a heartbeat. If there was like a Taylor Swift class, I'm like, sign
Yeah.
me up right now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think there should be a Swiftie school. Since this is Swiftie school, I'm like, we need a collaboration with the college course stat. That would be really fun. But on
Totally.
your mention of, college classes, I have thought for a long time, especially with her teasing it in the All Too Well short film, the book, and she's filmed in the
Hmm.
bookstore, the book I would love. I think that you're right. I think she'll lean into maybe directing or something in the film world for a bit. But there are two big wishes of mine for the future of Taylor's is a book, some sort of it could be anything. I'll take whatever, but that and then her version of a ticketing platform to replace
Oh,
Ticketmaster.
great point. Out of if any artist could do that, she
It
could
would be
totally
her.
do that.
Exactly. I completely agree. Well, Annie, I had so much fun. We have some people who will be watching on YouTube. So here's a sneak peek of the books if you have not seen them over on my Instagram already. Can you tell anybody who's listening who has not seen anything about your books yet where they can find them and where they're available?
Yes. So there's a couple different versions as you saw there. So the Reputation kind of black dramatic one is the one in regular bookstores and on online retailers like Amazon. The other book is a Walmart exclusive. And the coolest thing about that is there's actually exclusive prints in the back. So and there's like an envelope in the
Oh.
back, and I have not seen that yet. I'm trying to see where it is.
Oh, I
There's like,
see. Right here. Did
yeah.
not even notice that.
So it comes with prints, which is so, so exciting. So
I don't wanna rip it, but I will have to post about that on social media.
yes.
I did not even recognize that.
Yeah, so that's a Walmart exclusive, and I know that's available online, I think, and in stores. And so, yeah, I mean, you could get both. I would
People
not hate
already told
that.
me they ordered both.
Excellent. Perfect. Yeah, because they're beautiful. And my publisher did such an amazing job picking photos and just kind of putting it all together. And so I am grateful to them as well. They did an awesome job.
Well, and there's a cover for everyone. I am obviously a pink
Yes.
girl, so Lover is perfect, but I have a more neutral rest of my home, so the black one is great for our coffee table.
Excellent. That sounds perfect. I love it. There's a tailor for every mood, every moment, every interior design.
Exactly. Annie, I so appreciate your time, especially during your big publishing week. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have all of Annie's information put in the description box of both
Awesome.
YouTube. If you're interested in sending in additional questions, feel free to drop those in the comments below. And I will see you on the next episode. Thanks,
Oh,
Annie.
thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I know all too well how busy life can be, and I am so grateful that you chose to stay. Now just know this is me trying, and I would greatly appreciate if you took a minute to leave a review or maybe share this episode with a fellow Swiftie. Make sure you join my broadcast channel on Instagram for more Swiftivities, and long story short, this love is real, and I'm beyond grateful for your support. See you next time!